They will be lured in with hypnotism from the Genestealer, and it will give them a kiss with its ovipositor and inject them with its blessed DNA. As we said earlier, there's
Yikes.
Mommy Genestealer.
No!
That's right.
No, that is not the intro, I swear to God. We're not having Mummy Genestealer as the intro. You foul man.
Mummy big forehead.
If someone made an image of this, I'm going to be so upset. Like, it's just going to be like, hate it. I hate it so much.
Niff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lorecrimes. Today, we have a very special episode for you because we are going to talk about the worshippers of the Star Children, that and many other names, those fine folk who love to tear you apart in the Death Watch video game. We are talking about the Genestealer Cults today.
Yeah. Woo.
Before we begin, Hal has something he'd like to ask all of you.
Yeah, before we get into the, I call them Levi Thieves as a name, because it's obviously Genestealers, if anyone enjoys that. Oh, I know, yeah, terrible pun. So if you are new or you've been watching along for a little while, we want to try this new little cheeky thing. And we want to hear a little bit from you, the audience. And so we'd like to pose a question to you. And we'd love to absolutely hear your response. The spicier, the better. I don't know, maybe not too spicy, let's be honest. Try not to swear, hopefully, because I think YouTube might give us a big no-no if we
shoot us in the head.
Maybe a bit strong there. But yeah, so we want to ask you this question, and we'd love to hear your responses. The funnier, the better. And the next podcast episode, we will read the funniest ones, and we'll obviously all try and behave like mature adults, like we all really are. And
Of course.
we'll dissect that and enjoy that. So the question we'd like you to answer is, what's your hot take on your least favorite Primarch? Put hashtag hot take in the comments if you want to participate along with this tomfoolery, shall we say. And yeah, we want to, I mean, the funnier, I said earlier, the funnier the better. And if you win, we'll give you a big shout out, and you will obviously tickle all of us. That sounded really bad, didn't it?
That sounded really bad.
Tickle our humour. There you go, that's it. Say that.
If you win, you can tickle Hal. What? We didn't agree to this.
Not in the contract. This is not us.
I can hear the sirens already. So yeah, the funnier, the better. Don't be afraid to go a bit crazy. Obviously, try not to swear, but we'd love it if you would participate in this little tomfoolery. That's all. I'll just say, I'll leave it as that. Tomfoolery.
Let us know why Perturabo is the worst.
Oh no, he's my favorite. Oh, I
Any
like
way
him.
of spelling Lorgar there? Blimey.
Oh, okay, controversial already. So, but that's not what we'll be discussing today, because today we are discussing a little insidious faction, shall we say, within the Warhammer space. Little shadowy, probably spooky, scary skeletons, but not quite. But today,
Sussy Bakas.
a lot of sussy backers,
gosh,
Levi
already?
thieves are like the nicknames are coming out immediately off the gate. I haven't even said the damn word.
There
yet.
are Genestealers among us.
Oh my god. Someone please, whoever's editing this has to put like the sus among us.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So today we are talking about Genestealers / Genestealer Cults, boys. Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Strap yourselves in. Prepare for some, not quite heresy, but some shenanigans, some Xenos love today, and let's get straight into it. So if anyone here is new or is not quite familiar with Genestealers in Warhammer, I'll give a little bit of a brief kind of description of what Genestealers are. So Genestealers are a kind of cultist, Xenos / kind of human like hybrid race that infect so many of the worlds in the 41st millennium. Unfortunately,
Filthy mutants,
absolutely
scum.
filthy,
Ugh.
definitely scum. And they are kind of these weird, like chitinous, multi-limbed, bulbous head creatures. They have a lot of human characteristics. I wouldn't say they definitely don't look human, but they're kind of recognizable, and they are very much intimidating. A lot of them are quite a few of them have like purpley, kind of sickly skin, and a big point, as I said just a second ago, is the multi-limbed part. I put a big point here to mention that, I need to stress this a lot, that all of their hairlines are socially distancing, because none of them have hair. So, as bald, all of them are bald. As the
thing is, I
go,
was thinking a while back, like the first Pokemon game, there's that bit where Bill goes into like a thing and he gets turned into like a Pokemon mix. I was like, imagine him and an Ekans. That's basically a Genestealer. There you go.
That's actually quite a good idea.
Man.
When you said Pokemon, I thought you were going to mention the part where, like, who's the guy who sends Ash on the quests? Who, like...
Professor Oak?
Yeah, Professor Oak, but people make the joke that he just sends him away so he can be with his mum.
That's a valid point.
No, Ash's mom is with Mr. Mime.
Oh, my lord. Okay, we're not going there. But see, they are all... Continuing the trend in Warhammer, all evil characters are bald, so therefore all Genestealers are pretty, I wouldn't say evil, are pretty good to a certain perspective, but we'll get more into that in a little bit here. And so if you are kind of a little bit new, or maybe you've not really dabbled too much in Warhammer, I thought it might be cool to learn that Genestealers themselves are actually inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. I finally get to talk about it. My favorite thing.
The King in Yellow comes.
He does, and I am super happy we get to talk about this, because not often we get to talk about the creepiness of Lovecraft work in Warhammer. But they kind of... Genestealers themselves are inspired by the story of the Shadows over Innsmouth, and they're kind of a play on what was the Deep Ones, the kind of these underground fishy people that looked very human. They're kind of gross. So whoever's doing the edit on this will see a picture and they'll be like, ugh, and they're not going to enjoy that. And the Genestealers are kind of inspired by that. So if you do know Lovecraftian horror or any of that work, it's definitely like this is going to sound this is going to sound very familiar to you as we sort of get into the nitty gritty. So we're going to talk about Genestealers now with the good old, the beginning, the absolute, I would say Chad, but I've nicknamed him Senator Armstrong / Edward Scissorteeth as a nickname for this is the pure Genestealer. So this is the Xenos race in Warhammer, and this is the origin, and this is the guy who basically starts it all. So this Xenos is, as I mentioned earlier, it's like a multi-limbed kind of chitinous, bulbous head, like weird. To be honest, guys, do you think they're ugly? I think they're kind of ugly, in my opinion.
I might have to talk to the local magus about what you've been saying lately. You just don't fit very well into the congregation.
My apologies. All of them are beautiful.
In the interest of not demonetizing the channel, I won't go into what I find attractive.
Oh Lord! Oh Lord!
All I know is they're very ambidextrous. That's all I know.
We'll leave it at that. Imagination is more
Mommy
powerful.
Magus.
Yeah.
What is monetization? So the Genestealer itself is a kind of infiltratey, creepy, multi-limbed Xenos, and this is like, it definitely is. I'm trying to think of like the primogenitor. That this is the one that gets the ball rolling. So a Genestealer will infiltrate, and I put quotes, infect a victim. It's implied that they kind of do. It's not anything racy, shall we say? But there's like an infection of typically a human victim, and this will sort of start to spread the genes, and this sort of original Genestealer becomes the patriarch. he becomes like a beacon for a certain, I guess, hive mind, shall we say, and he becomes the origin of the Genestealer cult within whatever little area it's infesting. These ones actually, often at times when they've kind of done their little thing, they've had they've had their go, they've had like their cigarette, and they're like, "Oh, I'm having a bit of rest now." So they actually get like a bit monstrously obese, and they become even more psychically powerful, and they kind of sit in the dark spaces. They're kind of a bit scary. But that's when we move on to what is the next generation of the Genestealer cult. So this is, forgive the names, by the way, because I'm going to mess up every name because they all got awful naming, because I don't know how to pronounce them, but it's called a Contagi with 2 I's at the end. A little bit. Contagi. That makes a lot more sense.
Contagii? I'm trying to remember back to like Rome Total War where they'd scream like Triorii. Maybe it's like Contagii.
Triorii.
I'm not sure that was the inspiration, but it makes sense, to be fair. So this is the Genestealers come in, and this is the person that's been infected by the Genestealer. And I put in brackets so people can remember, if you're new, this is the Austin Powers of the Genestealers, because this one it's horny baby. And yes, I actually made that joke.
What?
Yep, this is usually like a regular human, and they've just been infected, and they essentially want to go and procreate, shall we say. So this is the person who's like, wow. So this is the Austin Powers generation.
Macadababi.
Pretty much, yes. The next generation of a Genestealer cult is called the Maligenasi or Maligenasi. I think it's like Maligenasi or something like that. It's very, again, words hard. And this is the first generation that's born to the previous one, the Contagi, like the first infected victim. And this one is just a beast of a thing. It is an ugly, we said Bulba's head earlier. This thing is like, it's like could ram a brick wall down. Like it's pretty big. It's
you can
also
imagine them getting bullied at school. Right, rhino head. Like, what did you call me?
My naming for this stage, I call it Patrick from SpongeBob, because that's how I imagine they sound. They're not very intelligent, and I put a little a little quip here, like a little thought I had, which was they're only useful for synchronized grinning, because that's how stupid they are.
Just going in on them.
If anyone wants to think,
Genestealers.
let that sort of mix with you guys a little bit. Synchronized grinning.
Who'd win in a spelling bee, them or the Ogrins?
Oh, that's a tough question. Probably them,
Gotcha.
but they wouldn't. They can't. Actually, no, they can't really speak, these ones. So probably the Ogrins, but they wouldn't. They win by just the attempt. So they're pretty much like they're like the foot soldiers essentially. And the next stage we get in the Genestealer cults are this is like the generation born to like enormous hulking beasts, and these are the more slightly human looking ones. They're called the hybrid generation. A lot of these have like multi limbs still. They can actually speak, which is obviously scary, and they're pretty much a very, like when you look at it, you'd be like, that is clearly not human, but again, it like looks slightly human. Slightly like Lovecraftian inspiration there. Like things that look slightly human often appear more scary.
A bit uncanny.
Bit uncanny valley sort of thing. I nicknamed this one the Sacha Baron Cohen because that guy could inhabit any role, and I was thinking of like Borat, Bruno. I'm not saying that the Genestealers are like Bruno. If anyone's seen that film, that's a bit overstimulating, shall we say? But they are essentially. Yeah, they're in between at what a original Genestealer multi-limbed one is, and a bit more human. And this is when we get to the next stage, which is the true hybrid. So this is the one where this is the first time they can actually blend into human society. They are, again, it looks like slightly off. It looks a little bit off. The person looks a little chunk, shall we say, a little bit chunk.
Like in the uncanny valley kind of feel.
Very pretty much, yeah. This one you'd have to have you'd have a double take, if you know what I mean.
It's like Emperor, what's his name, Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. You're like watching it like, that's not Peter Cushing. There's something off. I don't know. There's something doesn't quite work.
A little bit like that, yeah. I nicknamed this sort of group the a Modern Warfare 2 lobby back in the day because they're like slightly they are human obviously, but you can tell something's slightly off. So I thought that might be the does anyone have any controversial opinion about that? I think they might be okay there. And I think the last generation we get here to is called the Primacy, which is this is the one which is it's all literally could be human. This is the very much this is the person who will infiltrate higher ends of society, and if you're say like a typical old human like us, unfortunately, you will probably encounter this is the one that will be like the face of a Genestealer cult. I nicknamed this group the Elon Musk simps. Because I figured like they're pretty much 99% human, but they've got a little bit of a weird behavior. So so I thought that might be the sort of tick, if you know what I mean. So we have Senator Armstrongs to the Austin Powers to Patrick from SpongeBob, Sacha Baron Cohen, Modern Warfare 2 lobby, and then Elon Musk simps, if everyone's following along.
Okay.
Well, it's a good thing we don't have a Twitter account for this channel.
Very much so. But I thought people might enjoy that because it's just Genestealers are a nice like kind of undercut. They're like can be scary but also a little bit funny. So I thought it's nice to have a little bit of humor in Warhammer eventually. And then we get to, funny enough, the most human looking Genestealer will then produce the Puri, which is actually an original Genestealer at the end of it. So they essentially it's spelled Purii again. Also, I think it's not a puree like a P. Puree, not like a pea puree you have with your.
Genestealer puree goes great on pizza. What?
Not like something you have with your mushy peas or anything like that with fish and chips. Get your cultural reference in now. Two of you guys have no idea what I'm on about, and it's perfect. And
yeah, I like fries. Fries.
It's chips, man. It's just straight up chips. It's really, French
love
fries.
Me fries. Love me puree.
Susan made dinner. Lovely. Oh man. And so they kind of basically the cycle begins again, and everyone is like, oh no, the Genestealer has returned, and all the new generations will spawn from that one.
Now you've said it like that, I'm just thinking of Elton John's going, it's the circle of genes, just like the disgusting way that they
that doesn't that hits wrong. That hits really wrong. Oh my god. So for Genestealer cults themselves in Warhammer, where you'll typically find these enlightened places, Eli, excuse me for being so misguided. Enlightened places. A lot of these are like found in like hive cities, space hulks. A lot of the time they're kind of hidden in, I think I put it like the downtrodden areas of the Imperium. Obviously, Imperium, a million worlds. Obviously, a lot of places for Genestealers to hide, and they often will put themselves in places where the Imperium will say security's light, shall we say? They security's diet security there, because it's just not something they want out in the open yet. And a Genestealer cult itself will often, as I said just a second ago, they'll be underground. They're kind of, as most cults things do, they're kind of hoping to infiltrate and spread. So they'll start from a very underground. They won't be open at all. They'll be recruiting. Oh, sorry. When I say recruiting, I mean spreading the genes. So they'll be spreading the genes, and it will kind of lead into
spreading their genes like margarine.
Very much so, and they'll eventually lead into a sort of a open rebellion and war. And this is a big, bad no for the Imperium in Warhammer. They're not having it. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. They're not happy with that part. All the parts before that, to be fair, but that's like the big kind of thing, like when a Genestealer cult essentially unleashes itself. And the kind of first time that Genestealers in Warhammer were found was an event called Gossar Quintus, called the First Contact. So this was a mining colony, and this is sort of where the I think Colin might have mentioned this even just before we started, but it's where the Ordos, I think it's the Xenos, who's the Space Marines who fight Xenos in particular.
Death
Watch. So, excuse me, Death Watch. Law crime there. So the Death Watch, they first encounter Genestealers there, and the Imperium was just not happy after that. It was not a good time. And just a few little spicy names of some of the cults, because they're quite well organized, unfortunately for humans. And a lot of them have like kind of... a lot of them have like really cool names. I'm actually quite a big fan of them. So ones like some of the more famous ones are like Bladed Cog, Hive Cult, Inner Worm, Pauper Princes. Actually, I like that one. Probably my favorite. Rusted Claw. Not a fan of that one because it makes it sound a bit dodgy. Twisted Helix, Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, Cult of the Second Son, the Brotherhood, and the Sons of Jormungandr. Which actually, to be fair, that's the most but that one slaps hard.
That name goes hard.
Sons of Jormungandr or something like that with a proper accent would
Norse
be better.
mythology, yeah.
That one hits hard. I like that one. And sort of the unique powers of the Genestealers, because they are obviously not a carbon copy of anything, shall we say? We'll get to spoilers later, but they do have like some unique powers within their race. So they a lot of it's like focused around manipulation, influencing. All of the cult members, even ones which was the infected one, the Contagi, we said earlier, even they all have this kind of link to each other. They feel like a psychic pull, and so they all follow a kind of greater consciousness that is projected out, or should I say, beaconed from their patriarch, as we mentioned earlier. But we'll go into more of that later. And particularly if you're playing on the tabletop, or you see like the little models, the really cool part of them is their technology, which is essentially Mad Max. I think everyone might agree with that. It's essentially a copy of Mad Max there. And so it's all like kind of salvage material. It's all a bit run-of-the-mill. They kind of all found it. They often use actual Imperial arms, so things like las guns and things like weapons like that. Or like, there's a cool model. Oh, sorry, my voice went there. There's a cool model with like a buzzsaw, I think, as well, which is actually quite grim dark, because I don't think he uses it only for war. But
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, they're pretty like gnarly, I'd say. But they have like a lot of sabotaging equipment too. And the kind of so if you were to like encounter a Genestealer cult, which obviously won't happen, anywhere in the real world, but their kind of big thing, like if they were encountered by humans, you see their worship, and their whole shtick is that they worship like a doomsday event. Like every one of them, or the various names I mentioned earlier, they're all kind of hoping for, I guess, a rapturous event, and they all worship this multi-limbed, four-armed emperor character, which is kind of creepy. Actually, more than kinda, it is very creepy, and it's sorry, not creepy. Sorry, Eli, excuse me. It's the perfect representation of the emperor. I have to remember this. Excuse me, it's my heresy there. And this kind of rapturous event, this day of Ascension, is what they're all building towards. Their patriarch will tell them they'll all rise up when this day comes, and all the cult will be singing their praise. And it's essentially, when that day arrives, that will be the end of the cult. But we won't spoil that just yet. But does anyone have any questions or quips about Genestealers so far? Is everyone okay with the nicknames I used?
I was gonna say, I thought when you brought up the first one, that like they're like fat and good at grinning. I couldn't
synchronized grinning, only useful for synchronized grinning.
You said that, and I thought, I don't know why, I thought of Janemba from that Dragon Ball Z movie. But like the first one where he's big, fat, and yellow and stupid.
That's genius. That's oh man, that's hilarious. That's the only kind of quip about them, is that they're not the smartest essentially, but they're chunk though. They're pretty dumb and chunk.
So is that the rapturous awakening when Gogeta comes and beats the hell out of them?
If only. I have to unlock Ultra Instinct for that moment. Oh, this is just not happening. So yes, anyone else have any other questions or little comments?
Is there like Are there ways? Do they have the equivalent of like operating phaetons for you to rise up if you have so much money to get into the certain hierarchy of the cult? Little Scientology joke for you there.
I was about to say I'm not sure we're going to name drop that, but I can actually confirm there is. I think I mentioned there's like Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, David Miscavige. No, the Scientology, obviously famous one we're all familiar with, but it's that they don't really have a kind of complex system like that. It's more like I can feel you're powerful, you will do good, go do the thing.
So there's no Genestealer like Tominius Cruises or something.
No Tominius Cruises. No. Oh my god, who's the guy from Greece?
John Travolta.
There's no Johnnius Travoltius. There's no.
Leonidas. He sounds like an ultramarine though.
Or Willius Smithius, because there's no Will. I think that was one there. But yeah, so if anyone has any other questions or quips before we move on to the expert section.
Yeah, I think no, not for now.
Perfect. Well, I'll hand it over to our esteemed, our leader, our cultural guide in the ways of the Genestealers, Eli. So Eli will take it away with our expert section. Go ahead.
Indeed, I will. We will learn about the Genestealer cults from the perspective of a true believer. So, starting
I did
from
all
the
right.
top.
I did all right.
Starting from the top, Genestealer itself, as Hal said, it's a Xenos species of a divine race known as the Star Children. The Star Children are led by their gods, who aren't really named completely. They're just the Star Children. We originally see the Genestealers on the moons of Ymgarl, and they thought they were separate from the Star Children, and then would eventually find out that they aren't. They're part of the big, massive conglomeration of the nomadic race that they are. When a Genestealer makes planetfall, because the Star Children send them out far and wide to grasp all of their sons and daughters in their wide arms to one day bless them with Ascension. But the Genestealer goes to ground immediately when it is upon a planet, goes into hiding, because obviously the Imperium does not quite understand the divine properties of this being, and
This is so much propaganda, I just have to say.
The Imperium understands just well enough where to put the bolter shells. That's what I'm saying.
Can I have a question? Do they ever like? I have an image in my head that you said like they rocket towards like a planet. Does someone like throw them like a javelin, like and just yell like yeet, absolutely yeet them?
Like B2 in Titanfall 2.
I think they're just sent out from the ships.
That's a funny image.
They spend a lot of time in what are they called? Space Hawks. There's a lot of them in Space Hawks, but overall they're just sent in their little spore packages, basically. But anywho, so it goes to ground, it hides, and then eventually, when a lucky individual comes by, they will be lured in with hypnotism from the Genestealer, and it will give them a kiss with its ovipositor and inject them with its blessed DNA. As we said earlier, there's...
Yikes.
Mommy Genestealer.
No!
Right.
No, that is not the intro, I swear to God. We're not having Mummy Genestealer as the intro. You foul man.
Mummy big forehead.
If someone's made an image of this, I'm going to be so upset. Like, it's just going to like, hate it. I hate it so much.
No.
The Genestealers themselves are... They have 6 limbs, as we said. 2 of them usually end in like talons or some spiky thing. They're very
many-armed mummy.
That's right. They're very fast. They're extremely fast and extremely cunning. Very intelligent. They're an apex being in general, wherever they go, basically. And one could say that they're probably the biggest threat to the Imperium, which I know has probably said a lot about a lot of things. But compared to Chaos, the Genestealers are far, far more widespread and dangerous.
So our blades of grass will be fine.
So once the Genestealer gives its blessing to this individual, the individual and all of its offspring forever now will be under the angels' guidance, let's say. They're all linked together in one brood mind. And as the generations go on and this thing is fed psychic might, it will become a beautiful and immensely powerful being known as the Patriarch, who is the four-armed emperor sent by the Star Children to liberate their people and bring them into the embrace on the day of Ascension.
Is what people were talking about? Me and Eli said this before we had a joke like, is this what they mean by take down the patriarchy? because it's an actual gene stealer, because that makes a lot more sense in the Warhammer world.
New spin on patriarchal tyranny, if I ever heard one.
It's literally there. Oh.
So the I guess the pre-generation, I don't know if we call it the first generation, is the Contagi. As we said, they're just regular people living regular lives, and all of a sudden they really want to have a family and settle down, and so they do, and then they give birth to potentially one of the most blessed generations of the Emperor's children.
Hang on a minute, I thought this was Genestealers, not Slaanesh.
They are far more angel than they are human, usually coming out of the womb with 5 to 6 limbs, and eventually become acolyte hybrids, which lurk in the shadows waiting for the day of Ascension, because the oppressors often misunderstand their blessings for corruption. So they cannot be revealed, and often the great aunts and great uncles of the congregation will hide away in tunnels and secret passages until they are allowed to come to light, climbing on walls and hissing. And yeah, how far the Imperium is from the truth, indeed. Next,
with all the rest of the vermin fitting baby in the tunnels.
I was going to say, I'm going to joke just like my aunt, but then I'm like, I'm so sorry, auntie. she's not walking on the walls hissing, I swear.
Moving forwards, we have the basic hybrid, who is similar, but a human form is slowly starting to ebb through. They can speak in mutters and utterances of low Gothic. They still have the extra arms, purple skin, but they start to stand a little taller instead of hunched over like the originals. But they're far, like all the generations, they are faster and stronger than the non-believers. Thirdly, we move on to the true hybrid, who now can pass as a mutated human in most of the overpopulated and poorly treated societies, where a lot of mutants already are. And as much as the Imperium hates its mutants and stuff, on hive cities and planets with like hundreds of billions of people, or however high the populations get, mutants are pretty common and generally aren't that out of place in the really lower class and underhive and all that stuff. So they can kind of walk amongst society depending on where the cult is at the time. But a lot of the heroes of the cult will come from the 3rd and 4th generation, which we'll get into later. There's a lot of different forms of beings that come from the brood, and they're all blessed in their own ways. But now the true hybrid obviously stands straight up. The only difference between them is a little bit tinted skin, yellow eyes, and most of them, will have a 3rd arm, which is awkward for balance, but I'm sure they get used to it, and it's quite handy. Fourthly, sorry, this is my 6th point, but fourthly is the Primarchy, or whatever we said.
Primarcy, I think.
Yeah. They pass as fully human. They're just dudes, usually with the yellow eyes as well. Sometimes a little bit tinted skin, but generally they just look like pure humans.
Are you telling me they're not Elon Musk simps? Because I feel like I've got that really wrong.
They generally look pretty normal.
Do use Neuralink, but other than that, you know.
Yeah.
A little bit of headcanon.
What's Mark Zuckerberg's thing he's making with the virtual world? What's it called again?
Metaverse.
The metaverse.
I think it died pretty quickly.
Oh my god! I thought these guys use the metaverse like 100%.
Mark, he does look a bit like a Genestealer, doesn't he? A little bit.
Oh, that's a bit
Imagine
unfair.
him
I think that's a bit unfair.
having like the serpent tongue is going.
Who are we offending? Facebook.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Multi-millionaire. Oh, don't bully him.
I know.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he's fine.
Unfair to the Genestealers. They are more
that's
glorious.
right. That's what I was gonna say.
Oof.
The Primarcy use these things that I should have written down the name of because I don't remember what they're called. But they put these things like under their fingers and their skin, kind of, and it mimics the signals that like tech adepts have and stuff. So it lets them infiltrate places and get through doors and register as normal to all the tech guys. I really wish I remember what they're called. Maybe if you know in the comments, if you read The Day of Ascension, is a good book. You can tell me there, I guess. So, anyways,
The Flood and their logic plague.
I need more Halo lore. Halo's good stuff. Anyways,
Yeah.
and then lastly, as we said, an angel is born to the congregation, and a pure, strange Genestealer in all its beautiful glory arises, and is usually sent away on the holy quest and pilgrimage to the stars, to become yet another emperor, for a bent and battered and oppressed people to save somewhere out there. Yes.
There's only one emperor and only one type of angel. All the angels are deaf.
That's Susan with dinner.
Oh, gosh.
The emperor.
There's only one Phoenix King.
Oh, Finnabar.
Malekith.
Malekith is not Phoenix King. I think, and it's.
Well,
I think it's a bit of a handover to me here because I get to talk about my favourite thing again. We're going to talk about the HP Lovecraft inspiration, boys. Yes, my favourite thing. Yeah, you don't sound too excited. Yeah. So this is a bit more about what the Shadows over Innsmouth story is, because once, I think, again, as I said earlier, once you hear a bit more of it, you go, I see. So the Shadows over Innsmouth is a Lovecraftian story which is about the kind of worship of the Old One called Dagon. And this is done in the town on the east coast of America. It's a really rundown, like, kind of, even the town's described like an ugly place. And the Innsmouth people, over time, they kind of, their whole shtick is that, I don't know why that's there, but they slowly become more fish-like, and their eyes like start to bulge. They have like pallid skin, like sickly spots. They have like scales and things like that. And
is this the same story that they got? There was a game on the original Xbox called, I think it was Call of Cthulhu, and it was like this fishing village.
It's there's like a kind of link to that where they make a nod to what's called an Innsmouther, and
It's like a really good horror game before it becomes a really bad first-person shooter.
Yeah.
pretty. Actually, I almost bought that game, but I'm glad I didn't because people said it was like it's better to watch than play it. So we're never going to get a good Lovecraft game, and it makes me upset.
Darkest Dungeon.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. That's a good
It's a
point.
good game.
A trick of the light.
As I was saying, with the Innsmouthers, the people who live in Innsmouth, the town, they are kind of described as having what's called the Innsmouth look. And if someone ever said to you in real life, you have the Innsmouth look, someone is calling you ugly, because they look.
That's what they meant. Oh god, I'm gonna make a phone call after this.
Yeah, so these like they look like fish people. It's kind of so these are the whole kind of secret that they have within them is that they are hybrids of the deep ones, which like the original kind of fish people I mentioned earlier. So back in their like I guess their genes were messed with, shall we say, and
They were stolen.
they were stolen pretty much. And eventually over time, like the people who live in Innsmouth, they would slowly transform into deep ones, and like eventually like they'd basically be a fish person. But like, you know, the people who say like the mermaid thing, but the mermaid is like not the bottom half but the top half, so they have legs but they have the top half fish.
Oh yeah, Family Guy skit.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. And eventually when they're fish people, they join their gods in the very deep ocean, like in underground cities. And even in Innsmouth, like the people who live there. Even before they become deep ones, they have the cult of Dagon, which is spread throughout the town. So I'm pretty sure you're seeing the link with Genestealers themselves, and they worship the deep ones and Father Dagon, shall we say, and they kind of, their whole thing is they look down towards the depths of the sea, and obviously Genestealers themselves look up to the heavens, shall we say, for the day of Ascension, as we mentioned earlier. And I'll chuck it back to Eli to describe their amazing living habitat. You know, their a nice apartment, shall we say?
Well, sure. I wouldn't say it's overly comfortable, but most cults can be found in human populations, especially hive worlds. But humans are not the only race lucky enough to receive revelation. The orcs and Eldar and Tau and the likes are all accepted by the Star Children's embrace. Human civilization is just a lot easier to infiltrate because they are extremely overpopulated, usually on places like hive cities, and usually the Imperium is fairly, well, maybe a little more than fairly, oppressive towards their people, depending on the world, most worlds.
This one here.
And living conditions usually kind of suck in general. But more than that, the security, it's very hard to police billions and billions and billions of people in such a gigantic place. And as you may know, a lot of hive cities have underhives, which are already just like crime dens. And no police are ever going to go down there. RBDs, whatever, I guess. Space Hawks, common sight for the Genestealer brood, of course. But also, other than the human civilizations, we do have minor Eldari craft worlds. It doesn't really work that well though, because the Eldari are a lot more vigilant.
I think Colin, how we have to ask how you feel about them touching your precious Eldar, because I imagine you're not happy.
Very few left.
Good luck to the one who tries, because he's going to be Kentucky Fried Genestealer in short order.
Yeah, that is unfortunately usually what happens. It takes a lot of extra breeding cycles to get the Genestealer stuff going in the Eldari because their genetics are a lot more
Refined.
Yeah, that's a good word. Refined. And their society's obviously a lot more
Vigilant?
Better.
Vigilant's the word, I probably think.
Just vigilant in general, yeah. Yeah, so the Eldar are kind of hard to get. Orcs also kind of hard to work with. We'll talk about that later, though. I guess I'll keep going about the general living habitats.
Oh, no, like orcs are born through mushrooms, so surely that kind of interferes with the process.
Well, it makes it harder, but it's still possible. It's still possible.
The Genestealer Cults just like, I like a challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
Flexes in front of mushrooms or something.
Yeah, the Genestealers try to avoid the orcs, but like if a Genestealer's been waiting like centuries to find a good host population, and orcs are the only things that are around, then they might as well try.
Take what they could get.
Yeah, literally. For humans, though, hive worlds the best. Agri worlds are also actually pretty good because there's a lot of open field in general, so the populace are kind of like spread out in tight clumps, I guess. And if the cult can take over the agri world, then they have a very convenient way of spreading the gifts of the Emperor to the stars in the form of corrupted, or, well, not corrupted enough for us, of course, extra ingredients in the food that they send off. Let's say that, so that they can spread the genes throughout the stars in rations and whatnot, in livestock. So that's pretty nice and convenient for most cults who are on agri worlds. Shrine worlds are somewhat susceptible as well. They're the religious kind of crypt worlds, the worship worlds for the emperor. So there's a lot of ecclesiarchy going on, and a lot of robes are worn, which is very convenient for hiding a third arm and other such blessings.
I like the idea that, like, on the agri world, it's really difficult to get a hoodie. Like, oh, we just can't find the attire we need. Oh,
All they can find are very large sun hats, and that doesn't help with the arms.
or just like they find like a sack of potatoes, they put the potatoes, and they're like, well, this will do.
But on a Pope Benedict world, there's like plenty to go around. So-
And there's also lots of crypts and tombs in those worlds of nice underground maze type places to live in. Also, though, the populations on shrine worlds are used to having great reverence for a divine entity, albeit the wrong one. But they're halfway there, so they just need a little purple push, let's say. Yeah.
Purple
Delve
push is
worlds.
nightmare, by the way. Purple push. I don't know if I can sleep after saying that.
Sounds like a new
I'm-
variety of Vimto to me.
I was saying, I'm thinking of like one of those like push pops or something. I'd quite like a purple push.
What's a push pop? Is that like a frozen?
Yeah, it's like this like little
push-
frozen ice
Oh.
cream kind of thing where you push it out of the container as you're eating it.
Oh, we
They're delicious.
they're the same brands, but we have like the equivalent in the UK. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're talking about Genestealers and not ice
Push
ice
pops
cream.
are
Ice
tasty,
cream
though. I love
briefly.
push pops. Delve worlds, lastly, are a good place to go. Like Gossar Quintus was. They're mining worlds, just some called delve worlds, I guess. For pretty obvious reasons, there's a lot of places to hide on a mining world with tunnels going literally everywhere. And also, the conditions on mining worlds are like you can't get much worse than that. So it's pretty easy to find downtrodden and oppressed people on places like that who are already pretty willing to rebel. They just
North of England in the 80s.
Or Florida,
There's-
as we said
they
earlier.
just, they just need a couple extra arms to get the job done. Lucky for them, there's some extra arms to be spared. We'll talk about Gossar Quintus soon, though. But we'll talk about, for now, I suppose, the stages of a cult. It's not overly complicated. I mean, it is for them, but the actual ways of doing it. So the Genestealer shows up, blesses some people, then the generations start to spread. Obviously, this starts out really slow, and they have to be really, really, really careful to not be found out. Otherwise, the whole thing could just be burned away. Oh, my dog's barking. I'll have to.
He's
Genestealer.
not happy with the
Nice.
Sniffed out a
Genestealers.
gene stealer.
Good boy.
But yeah, so they operate in extreme secrecy the whole time, but especially in the first beginning stages, they have to be really careful because if the Inquisition finds you, then it's kind of over. Well, it is over. So they,
And the planet's probably over too.
yeah, exactly.
All the Grey Knights, we got a problem.
Yeah.
They're just in the vicinity, like, oh, we haven't got any demons to kill. We'll sort this out while we're here.
So they will continue to spread angel blood throughout the population, ever so slowly. Eventually, it proliferates very quickly, though, obviously, as you could imagine, as more and more people are touched by the Emperor. And they can soon spread after a few generations, sometimes even like hundreds of years. They will spread across the entire world, and sometimes maybe just the Hive City if we're in a Hive City. But yeah, the entire world is now running around in tunnels, being cool and blessed and whatnot. But the Day of Ascension, which is the end goal of every cult, right? It can be triggered early if it has to be. It's not ideal ever. Usually, sometimes I guess they can trigger it early if they need to.
You don't want a premature cult.
Yeah,
Explosion.
basically.
So inconvenient, am I right?
If your day of ascension lasts more than 4 hours, make sure to consult a doctor every week.
But yeah, so well, I should say they remain secret until the Day of Ascension, obviously, when they rise up from the tunnels and underground and take the planet for themselves. But this can be triggered early, because it usually only triggers when the Star Children are near. If a foreign invader comes to the planet, like say the Tau invade an Imperial world, and the Patriarch feels that the planet is in let's say, risk of being taken by the Tau, then the Ascension will be sprung early and they'll actually fight against these Xenos alongside their Imperial brethren. And then when the day is won, unfortunately, the guns will turn, and in a shocking revelation, the Imperial dogs will crumble beneath the might of the four-armed Emperor.
Treacherous.
Good times.
Even the sirens are kicked off. Like, yeah, the treachery when they started going off.
Good days. Good days. I think we kind of mentioned it already, but the oppression of Imperial people in general is very widespread and is very easy to find on most worlds. Unhappy people. Yeah, I don't know. It's like working conditions suck depending on if your tech adept's good enough or not. Usually they're not very good though, and all they care about is what's the word? Proficiency, productivity. There you go. So they'll do everything in their power to increase your productivity. When I mean, one might think that means having a happier workforce, but usually it means
It
using
doesn't
dangerous.
work.
Yeah, it usually
Doesn't work.
means having dangerous chemicals, slave drivers, the likes. The Imperium's classic go-tos to just keep the war machine running. I mean, they
Yeah,
don't have
2
much
to
of a
maybe
choice.
3 meals a day. You pray to the Emperor. That's all
Yeah.
you need. It's fine.
2 to 3 meals a day is a great luxury.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll
You're
get your one
eating-
corpse bar and like
Yeah,
it.
you're eating corpse starch in the warrens down below the earth, and all your people are dying of lung cancer from your coal mines and whatever.
Jesus
That's fake
Christ.
news. There's nothing going wrong. It's all fine. It's absolutely fine. Imperium treats
Everyone
workers
has.
with absolute respect and feeds them well, and there's no problems ever.
There's puppies and ice cream for everyone.
Yeah, we have therapy dogs in the mines every day just to be sure.
Shakes fist in Karl Marx. Just feel that.
Jeez. So the Star Children, of course, hear the cries of all of these poor people. So they send their glorious angels and patriarchs out to save them and unify them, as the cult to one day rise and be blessed by holy union with the gods above. So, as the cult grows larger, they will slowly try to infiltrate positions of power, especially just political stuff in general. The planetary governor, maybe the planetary governor's advisor is secretly a cultist type of thing. Things like that. And many of their children will likely be taken by the tithe to the Imperial Guard. And this, depending on when they want to ascend, can be a good or bad thing. Bad because they're losing manpower for the time being, obviously, but good because this is giving some of them combat experience, and they can spread the word of the Emperor throughout the stars wherever they end up getting shipped off to. If they survive and come back, then it's good times. If they die, then it sucks, but at least they've spread some word. Or they might become part of the Planetary Guard, which is really great because that means we're primed and ready for the day of Ascension, and they have easy access to stolen goods like las guns and the like. And yeah,
Real nice weapons. Sentinel,
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
Yeah. Very safe and OSHA approved vehicles.
Was there a Genestealer in the Caiaphas Cain book?
There's a couple books where they.
I don't want to spoilers.
Gene-
Everyone
I
just
only
hasn't read
I
Caiaphas
only
Cain.
read one.
It's
I don't know.
not too much of a spoilers because the premise of some of the books is just Kane's fighting Genestealers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Shout out to Pancras No Work for his excellent video on Caiaphas Cain. My favorite answer in a pub quiz, shall we say? My law crime. My poor law crime.
So, yeah, like I said, they're joining the Imperial Guard. They're infiltrating the upper echelons, and now in the factories, if they're working in factories, when overseers aren't looking, they'll start, stealing scraps and putting together makeshift firearms like shotguns and stuff, and stowing them away under their belongings. Well, they don't own anything. Who am I kidding? But stowing them away where they can hide.
Sorry, that caught me off guard. They don't even. I thought you were saying like they knit as well, like they knit secretly or something. But nah, they don't own anything.
But they store those away and start to stockpile these refitted weapons and civilian mining vehicles often. Often these vehicles will be quote unquote lost and refitted for combat. There are some famous ones that are pretty general for all the planets. But yeah, the cult makes do with what they have depending on the planet that they're on. A Factorum planet will obviously be easier to make firearms and get the technology, whereas an Agri world, probably not. You're going to have to just, I don't know, do what you can. But also, an Agri world's probably not going to be. I don't know. This might be wrong. This might be lore crime. I assume that they're not overly heavily defended. Maybe that's wrong. But there's a lot of ground to cover where there's just like farm. So
I just like the idea of them herding cows and like, these will do. We use them as
Yeah.
weapons.
I will say though, for Agri worlds, I guess they have access to like genetic experimentation, which we'll learn a little tiny bit about with the Twisted Helix and some other ones. You know how they're trying to genetically modify all their livestock and whatnot and be efficient in that way. They have access to labs and stuff where they can splice genes and do more gene stealer shenanigans. Yeah, so
Have fun.
there's some cool. Yeah. But as we continue, the cult is quickly growing now. It's very big. They have lots stockpiled. They're waiting for the day of Ascension, but if they're on a very protected planet, they have to be really careful and they need to meticulously, perfectly plan the day because we have to remember they are just civilians with very little combat experience other than the specific bioforms that are made for specific tasks. And a lot of the hybrids are good at fighting, but still the large majority of the cult are just regular people. So even if there's a ton of them and they have a ton of equipment and weapons and the element of surprise, they still winning is not guaranteed. They could just be turned upon by the Skitarii or the Astra Militarum and just guns down and killed. But usually the failsafe for that is that there is broodkin within the Astra Militarum and Skitarii. The Skitarii can be infected, and no matter how many layers of code and falsehoods that they put in the heads of the what's the right word here? The Skitarii. They've been lied to a
Cog
lot,
boys.
obviously. Yes, the cog boys been lied to by
Adepts
the
of Mars.
ecclesiarchy. They have codes placed in their brains or their logic engines and whatever, so they have to follow what the tech adepts say. But those who are blessed and then later reawakened at times by a magus or other powerful individual can actually break the shackles of the false emperor and ignore any orders and codes given to them from tech adepts, which is cool.
And
Yeah,
Andy's not happy about the Force Emperor.
Not.
I'm even going to say such blasphemy for the Omnissiah. He's one of my faves as well.
There's I say without too much spoiling, that is in a Caiaphas Cain book as well. Some followers of the Omnissiah find out that they're not quite as safe as they think just because they're machinery.
Yeah. There is a cult that follows the true Omnissiah as well, but that's for
Ah,
later.
true. There's only one Omnissiah.
Yeah, it's Vol.
Oh,
the Emperor.
get out of here. Even I'm not with you on that one. He's not on this sire.
Oh my gosh. It's back to what I was supposed to be talking about. I went a little off topic there, but the cult's growing. We have equipment. We have lots of stuff that we need, and now tales of heroes and folk heroes in general start to arise as forms such as the Kellermorph emerge from the breeding cycle, which is a 3-armed vigilante who sparks the need for adventure in the criminal and a desire for freedom in the oppressed. We'll talk about her a little later. Kellermorph is like the fan favorite, I would say, of the general Genestealer believers. So there's lots of heroes now. They're going to get some guidance from bioforms such as the Primus being made, who is a very straight-backed military officer, strong type guy. But yeah, so they have lots of people to look up to, and there's really, really starting to have their claws deep into much of the imperial hierarchy and system in general. You're going to start seeing graffiti of the Great Worm form or depictions of the four-armed emperor throughout the streets. And the majority of the planet's society will eventually be blessed.
Typical Xenos mutants. Not only are they, besmirching the Imperium, vandals as well.
Worst of all, loitering too.
No lollygagging. That's the Skyrim guard say every 5 minutes.
I'm just imagining the video of the guy in the swimming pool who did like the MP, no, not the NPC. It's like, you there, stop there, criminal scum. And just like swimming, he's in the swimming pool. It's like, why won't you die?
He just gets flopped over in the water.
I'm thinking of a video where someone dives at a pool, and then it pans over. It's, there's a sign that says no diving. Then some guy dressed as Batman beats the snot out of him. It says no diving.
That's a good Batman voice. What the heck? All right.
Thank you.
It would be interesting to say that production rates and the compliance in general of these planets, usually in the latter stage of Ascension, are actually increased because the workforce is working fervently and they have hope in their hearts that soon all the pain and all the slavery will be taken away. So they work tirelessly to ensure that they are not discovered, and with great energy, as they are so close to the blessed unions, as the angels draw near to their planets, and their shackles will be torn asunder by the beautiful saviors. So, I think that's, for now, about the stages of the cult. When the Star Children come near, Ascension Day will happen, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's very exciting, very momentous day when the shackles of oppression are thrown off and violence erupts and everything goes crazy and they either win or lose, basically.
I feel like we should state at this point, this is very heavily from the perspective of the Genestealers, if anyone hasn't gotten that yet. Because
to be honest, I just like the idea of when you were getting started with the different stages, like, imagine the parent Genestealers having the talks, like, oh, when a mummy Genestealer and a daddy Genestealer love each other very much, there's this stage, then there's this stage, then this, and just having a Venn diagram to just explain to the child, like, this is where you fit in here.
This is where you build the lasgun in the factory. He's like, what's that got to do with the love part? It's like, what do you mean love? Oh.
I like to imagine that's how some Inquisitors find out there's Genestealers. It's like, things are too productive here. You guys are working too hard. Something's not right.
That's actually a very good point, isn't it?
Yeah.
There was I remember when you were mentioning bits of the kind of Uprising and such, though. There's a really good episode of Hammer and Bolter called A New Life, and if anyone has Warhammer Plus, go and watch that episode, because I remember, like, the whole series, I'm like, it's kind of okay, but that episode in particular, it's about the Genestealer Cults, and it's really good.
Nice. Maybe I should go watch it. I haven't seen it. I've only seen the Eldar one.
Oh, it's the most recent one at the time of recording.
R.I.P. Avatar of Cain.
Yeah, literally, my face when Avatar gets killed by 10 bolters.
Oh, for the
really slowly as well.
He just sits there while they shoot at him.
At least the striking scorpion in that
that's what I was
was
thinking.
a baller.
Shouldn't be called Cain, should be called Victim, because the lore writers just keep ruining it.
Oh man. Well, speaking of Eldar, why don't we talk about Genestealers in Xenos races and other races other than human, and then we'll talk about Gossar Quintus a little bit. So, like I said, you can find Genestealers in basically every race. I don't think it works in Necrons. I'd be pretty surprised. I haven't heard of it working in Necrons, but I mean, if the Flayer virus can spread in Necrons, then maybe, and the Destroyer virus,
or if Lucius the Eternal can emerge out of a Necron for some reason.
Maybe we can get Genestealer. Maybe we can't get Genestealer Necrons then too. That'd be cool. That'd be wild. All right. Anyways, but usually the way of infection for other races. It's good in like merchant ships and rogue traders for a Genestealer to hide away in secrecy while trades are being done. And oh no, your box of I don't know. It's a funny thing to be in a box. I have no idea. Your box is
definitely
stuffed.
not hentai. Definitely not hentai.
A pipe.
Yeah.
Okay, we had to blur that
Yeah.
part to beat that out.
Your
Oh.
box of stuff all of a sudden has a Genestealer in it instead of whatever you were supposed to be getting. How convenient for the Star Children. Tau fleets are very susceptible because, as some might know, the aircast are really usually the only ones who stay awake when Tau go places because they don't have warp travel. They have faster than light, last I checked, but they don't have warp travel, so it still takes some time. And Tau life cycles are pretty short. I think they live like 60 years on average or something.
Weak.
Yeah, unless you're a Farsight. He's a G.
Just like the Chad, like Astarte, he's like, I live to be however long until I'm shot.
Really?
It's amazing.
Oh yeah. I wonder how old Eldred is. Huh? What 10,000?
Yeah.
Quite old.
Younger than the Emperor.
Quite old.
He's using a lot of hair dye at this rate.
Yeah, so yes, a lot of times the Tau, the fire cast and earth cast who are sleeping in status might just wake up to a completely new society that's just Genestealers. Or they won't wake up at all. That's probably the actual reality. now that
Did
I
you
think
not always have 4 arms?
Yeah, I was just thinking him. We're going like 1, 2.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange.
And like I said earlier, the Eldar are a lot harder to get into. It almost never really happens because they find the hybrids right away and just dead. Yeah.
Wasn't there
It's
one-
like-
There's only like 15 of them, so they'd probably be like, hang on, you're acting a
Yeah.
bit weird, and I know you really well.
You didn't have 3 arms yesterday. What happened?
Wasn't there one where they'd let them? Is this like an obscure
There-
piece of law? They
there
let
was.
themselves. They let
There
themselves
was.
be. Do you want to say that? You probably know more about it, Colin, than I do.
May I tell
Yeah,
the
go
tale
ahead,
very
go ahead.
quickly?
Sure.
It was basically I don't remember the name of the craft world, but it was before Spirit Stones had gotten around to the Eldar. So they had no way once they died to keep their souls from going to Slaanesh. So they figured, yes, the perfect way to do it is to instead let Genestealers infest the whole craft world. That way our souls will not go to Slaanesh when they die. Which I
Wow.
I can't say I follow.
Did it work?
Well, I don't remember, but I do know the Yanari wiped them out.
Well, that makes sense.
I mean,
That's
hey, at
weird.
to be fair, that like the Soul Stones, I think were in like millennia, like 32, 33 they were invented, which mean, and the Yanari weren't till like the end of the 41st millennia.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a solid 8,000 years of just chilling. To be fair.
Yeah, it's true. That's
It's
true.
just like the idea that the Inari came in. It's like, we are ending this science experiment.
Like no, this is whatever
Throwing the
Eldar
Bunsen
heresy
burners
is.
on the table, like burn it
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
no more.
Jeez.
Whatever the Eldar version of heresy was, they found it that day.
I guess it's not on my notes, but it would make sense to me that Eldar Corsairs are probably the best bet to go with for the Genestealers. I would assume, right? Like there's pirate bros.
Probably the patriarch hiding.
especially
money.
because a Corsair band can be anything from Uriel with his tens of thousands of ships
Yeah.
to one guy who decides I want to be a pirate now.
Yeah, literally. So them and maybe some outcasts, Yield Rangers and whatnot. Probably not Exodite Worlds because they're already so anti all that stuff. I assume they would just get it. Ted Kaczynski Eldar. I'll never forget it. I love the meme.
Oh my god.
Plus their worlds are alive, so the trees
Yeah,
themselves will be like, you don't seem right today.
Yeah.
I like
And-
the idea that the trees dob them in. Like, oh,
Yeah. Speaking of
you, like, shut up, don't.
speaking of not feeling right, we can go to the orcs. And orcs can be infested by Genestealers. The Genestealers kiss the brood cycle will go through the spore reproduction, so it still works through the spores. And sometimes they get away with it. Very rarely, but actually the less civilized orc society, as funny as that might sound, but the feral orcs who are infected usually can...
Is that the snake bites? The ones who are a bit more like tribal.
I
looking?
think they are. Just in general,
think
though,
it's
like
like
planets with
orcs.
orcs who are not evolved. Or,
Yeah, like
Yeah.
some of the orcs, like after a Wa ends and it's just spores left, they
Yeah.
don't grow into like I say
Basically,
less advanced orcs like that means anything. Like Warhammer
basically,
Fantasy
yeah,
orcs
yeah,
lost in
yeah.
40k.
That's what I was gonna say. They're the perfect orc, as imperfect as the host is. They are the perfect way to do it because they're not quite as connected with everything, and the societies that they're in don't notice quite as quickly that something is up. But
Do they end the whole thing of like, have you ever seen a purple orc? And they're like, aha.
Sneaky orc. I think
Nice.
I don't know if you're going to touch on that, but my favorite part about them infiltrating orcs is that they never usually make it in orc society because they're not aggressive enough, wasn't it? It's like they always get crunked. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Genestealer orc because it's just not
they,
orky enough. So it's just
yeah.
like
They're different,
You know,
and
So like, how about we just take a minute and we sit down and we wait a while, and then maybe in another generation, then we'll do a while. And they're like, wuss.
yeah. Were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, they can tell he's not right orky enough. They know
Yeah.
something's not right with this lad.
Exactly, and the Gene Stealer psychic connection distorts the Wa field, and they'll be kind of disconnected from the Wa, so they can just inherently feel that around them that there's something wrong with this lad right here, and then they eventually find out that they were taken over by the Bug Eyes,
It
and
affects their ward.
yeah. Okay. They do work sometimes though. Freebooter bands are great. Freebooter bands are perfect, and they become green broods as they kind of float across the galaxy as freebooters do, being orky. But generally, Orc Society also bad. So the good ones are Tau, and even the Tau aren't great. Like the actual Tau Society wouldn't go well, but Tau fleets are great, and humans. But it does make it very fun for the tabletop, because if you want to, you can make Genestealer Sectari or Genestealer Tau, or like convert any models you want. There's a lot of opportunities for doing that stuff on the tabletop, which is really cool.
Do you reckon we're gonna see a Genestealer Leagues of Voton thing at some point?
Probably, I wouldn't be surprised.
make them interesting.
I still haven't looked into their lore. I'm not gonna lie.
Without, you know, I'll hold off on why we might not see that till the end. But I do have some reasoning why that might not be too likely.
Good thing.
But that's
Colin
for
knows what he's
later.
talking about. Yeah. So let's talk about Gossar Quintus, the first contact, first discovery of the Genestealer cults. There was a high chance that they weren't the first and they were already there, but it was the first, and it was around the time, pretty sure, of the first emergence of the Star Children into our galaxy. Because that should be good to mention. The Star Children aren't even from our galaxy. They're truly divine beings coming from the ends of space to help our galaxy, because we're so privileged to see them here. But yeah, Gossar Quintus, it was the first Imperial world to be found, blessed by the Four-Armed Emperor, by the Star Gods in general. And it was a delve world. It was a mining world. So a great starting area to start. They also shipped a lot of things from this world, so even better. You'll see that in a little bit. The population was very well behaved. They performed their duty to a high degree. In fact, they produced a fifth more on their tithes than was demanded, and were content to live off the gross rations and tasty nutrient pills that are provided. Yeah. The great beliefs of the cult slowly spread until Inquisitor Chagrin, I think is his name, he took notice, and he believed it to just be some form of twisted imperial creed. He didn't know what it was quite at first, and then he showed up and was like, "Oh, something's very wrong here." Unfortunately for him, well, maybe not unfortunately for him. Unfortunately for the Imperium, the last communication that he ever sent off was that the planet's ruling dynasty was doing a great and diligent job, and that nothing's wrong. And then they never heard from him ever again. And a year later, just a regular kill team was sent to further investigate them, and then they were also lost. The large pit of the world. What was it called? I think it's just called the Great Pit. Yeah, I think that's it. Just a really big hole in the world. They went down there to
Pit of the
investigate.
galaxy.
Yep. It literally is, though. They went down there to investigate and they never returned. And so, Mr. Chaplain of the Ultramarines, Ortan Cassius, famous guy, he picked out his very own kill team to find the truth. He would, sadly, they would slay the Patriarch and kill lots of people. But it was too late. It was Savior Imperial celebrations. It was far too late. It was far too late because when they checked the shipping logs, the gut-wrenching truth was revealed to them that the cult of the Four-Armed Emperor had spread possibly to literally half of the entire galaxy. Wait, nice.
Oof.
Big oof.
We've got enough bolters for all of them. It's fine.
I picture like that last transmission the guy sent where it's like everything's fine. I picture the scene from episode 4 of Star Wars where Han Solo's like, everything's fine, you don't need to check on it. How are you?
How are you? I was imagining like a little at the end of like the message, just a little smiley face, just to be like, "It's fine." Smiley face.
Nice.
They're like, that seems a bit weird.
But it's like your parents doing texting and the emoji's like not used at the appropriate time. So it's a bit off.
And the receiving message goes, "Where's my kisses?" And you go, "Oh, come on, kiss."
It's like, what's the one with like someone, it's like a screenshot of someone saying like, oh, like
It's
you're
like
someone,
your
someone,
grandma
yeah,
passed away,
grandma.
it's a skull emoji. Yeah.
Oh man.
But yes, this is the reality of the Star Children. They will win. The galaxy is theirs for the taking, and it is primed for their embrace. Soon they will come, and the false emperor will not save you, except the embrace of the true emperor, or be condemned to death.
I know, Mardius Calgar might have a few words to say, to be honest.
Marnez Calgar can only fight so many Genestealers.
We got plenty of other Astartes.
Well,
We'll be fine.
I also remind me earlier we were talking about the other races. There's also the sected Kamara that knowingly infected themselves with Genestealers because they thought it'd be funny. They want to see what happens.
Oh gosh, that sounds
They must be
horrible.
really bored.
I mean, they are the Dark Eldar.
So now we can go on to the different cults. Hal, do you have a
Yes,
favorite cult that you want to talk about?
I picked a favorite cult because there's quite a few, and I picked one that's a little bit of a different flavor, shall we say? So my favorite Genestealer cult is Cult Tenebrous. So the kind of unique thing about them is that they were essentially infested with someone else's influence, shall we say? So they were in a bulk lander and it was swallowed by a warp storm, and it kind of left them essentially in the worst place, the smelliest place in the galaxy, on the edge of the Garden of Nurgle. So you can imagine, I mean, I don't know what's the city that everyone makes fun of in America, Colin? Like, is it Detroit?
Detroit.
I think it's like Detroit, but twice as bad as Detroit. And
Detroit become Nurgle.
I think that's a bit rude to Nurgle's garden.
Oof.
And so essentially the Genestealer cult, so sorry Eli, but they discovered a new way of thinking, shall we say. They became enlightened to a new master, and they were now infected by good old grandfather Nurgle's plagues, and they essentially have re-emerged back into real space, and they are essentially a Genestealer cult that serve chaos. I think they're quite a nice, like, bit of spice, bit of a different flavour.
Are they the only one who does that? There's not like a Khorne one. I mean, that'd be kind of rubbish. They just run around smashing people with their claws, I suppose. But
It might have happened in other Genestealer cults. I can't. It might be like a
dread to
minor
think
one.
what the Slanesh one would be doing.
You if you think of a Genestealer cult, that could be a thing. It probably is, honestly. Like
Slanesh's Genestealer kiss is a lot less safe for work.
Yikes. I'll hand it back to Eli because he's going to talk about some of the more
Sure.
popular, the main cults that you can buy. What was it? The little transfer sheets. So a lot of these ones you can play in your actual games of 40k.
Yeah. So the main ones with rules in the codex. We went through a lot of names earlier. We'll go through them again, might as well. But we have the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, originating from Gossar Quintus, as we said. Their specialty is tunneling and surprise assault. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. In the planning of the cult, they spent a lot of time with their mining equipment and stuff, making tunnels to just like their own. It's an underway. It's like the Skaven underway that they basically make,
Or
so they
the
can come out of anywhere.
the Genestealer Great Escape. Everyone's seen that?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
like them all standing in a tunnel doing their mining with their hard hats on, and then just being like, tunnel. And then that was just the inspiration, like just standing there for hours, and then it just clicked, and they were like, perfect.
Then we have the Hive Cult, who are just like military experts. They are all a bunch of warriors, and a lot of the Astra Militarum consists of their cult. They're pretty epic. We have the Twisted Helix, where a bunch of mad scientists, well, not mad scientists, genius scientists who have specialized in kind of genetic splicing, and they have these really, they have a lot of aberrants, these gigantic, monstrous beings that have been blessed with incredible strength and a small mind. Let's say.
Imagine what Fabius could do with some of them as samples.
Probably quite a lot of, yeah. I don't know what Fabius. I don't
They
really know
wouldn't-
what Fabius would do with it.
They wouldn't be his new men. They'd probably be like the very old men because we're not going backwards towards that. Oh man.
Yeah, but the Twisted Helix basically blends human flesh with angel blood and void stuff and all this conglomeration of just wild, crazy stuff. Moving on though, I guess we can say their specialties in melee. They get good rules for melee on the tabletop. I think they're like a fan favorite on the tabletop because you can bring pure strange Genestealers and they're really good. The Hive Cult doesn't have good rules, sadly, even though they're really cool. But anyways, the Pauper Princes are probably the most fanatical and religious of the cults. They have like living saints, just like the Imperium does, and the followers of the Pauper Princes will go to any lengths. Any cult will go to basically any lengths to protect their superiors, but the Pauper Princes will go to like new heights that you could not imagine, like droves and droves, just people running in front of the truly blessed beings to protect them and serve them as they should. We have the Rusted Claw, who are survival specialists. They have lots of biker gangs, and that's pretty much it about them. I don't remember. There's much more. There's not a lot of lore, I should say, unfortunately, about the different cults. It's not a lot of lore in the Genestealer cults in general. We're basically covering like literally everything today. But yeah, that's the Rusted Claw. They're cool. They're very tough. Then we have, what else do we have here? We have my favorite, personally, the Bladed Cog, who are a mix of Omnissiah worshipping, Star Children worshipping things. The cult is very analytical, and the initial day of Ascension was undergone by a blessed, what's the word for them? Scutari Alpha. So the regular cult has meticulous planning, but these guys are even bringing it all the way further. It's great, like how tech
Up to
adepts and those
11.
guys are. Yeah, they run the numbers, they crunch the numbers perfectly, and I'll give that to a Genestealer cult, and it's like the perfect uprising. It
reminds me of like that thing where there was that chess grandmaster went up against a computer and he lost. It's like, that's them. They're the computer.
Yeah. They mesh their blessed flesh with machine flesh, the four-armed Omnissiah, as he wills it. So there's lots of really scary things in the Bladed Cog. Just like animalistic, half living thing, half machine. I mean, you can just imagine the like scariness of regular AdMech in Warhammer and the grim darkness of that, and then just put Genestealers on top of that, and you get even better. Good old Warhammer stuff.
It's actually pretty intimidating. And what I'm picturing in my mind. Yikes.
Yeah. And then those are the major cults, really. Then we have some minor cults. There's 6 of them that I have here for you all. We have the Inner Worm, who I believe their patriarch came from the inside of a void whale. So they're very like guts oriented. They're like guts and
like, I'm
slaughter.
going to make a particularly interesting entrance.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the beginning of a your mum joke there. Like, your mum is so big. She come from a void whale.
Jeez. We have the Star Kindred, who I believe that when the angels come, the star will be revealed on their ever dark planet. We have the Blessed Wormlings, who, to be like their ancestors, I guess we can say, they eat worms and they feed people to these big giant bugs, and then they eat the big bugs. It's really weird.
The circle of genes.
We have the Cult Hydraic. I don't remember their thing really. I think they just spread everywhere because they're a Hydra. That makes sense to me. We have the Sons of Jormungandr. I said earlier, I like them a lot. They, instead of coming from below, they come from above, and they infest a large amount of space stations.
Oh my god, I just thought of fucking Randy Orton. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he just comes from Randy Orton slithering out.
Here comes the patriarch with the steel chair.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Oh, man.
They come from a string of infested space stations that stretch across the Black Nebula. So it's relative peace and privacy. It's a very good place. Spread, obviously, because there's not much resistance. And they take inspiration from the nomads of Star Children that they witness in the area. And those Star Children take asteroids and fill them with stuff and send them down to planets. So like them, the Sons of Jormungandr infest cargo ships and stuff and go down to planets and then burst forth and take it over. Or alternatively, infiltrate the planets to start the revolution and spread the word from there. I like them quite a lot.
The world's most horrifying ODST.
Yeah. I think one of my favorites, which this is kind of a spoiler for the Day of Ascension, I guess, but there's a cult in Ultramar, and they're called the Behemoid Undercult. They all stab their eyes out. They stab one eye out because they worship none other than Old One Eye. Old One Eye literally has his own cult, which is awesome. Yeah, I assume. Do you guys know who Old One Eye is?
Oh, yeah, from
Artifacts.
Battle of McCrag as well.
Spoilers.
Magnus the Red?
Yeah.
That'd be a
It's
weird
an immortal
thing for them to do.
Old One Eye, for those of you who don't know, the Ultramarines fought a war against the Star Children, and Old One Eye has remained, and he's just this like immortal, invincible angel that they've left behind, and he has his own cult now.
He's making his way downtown. He's walking fast. Plays his fast on the homebound.
Like Old One Eye, these guys believe in a creed of physical strength and aggression, and they have big, giant armored engines that are big, like an aberrants. Talk about those soon. That are just living battering rams, basically. There's awesome. They're awesome. There's a few other like random cults that don't really matter though, that I've never even heard of. They're on my list, but I don't even know what they are. So it's like, yeah, there's like an infinite number of cults. Literally, if you could think of one, if you could homebrew one, it's like logical enough for it to exist to an extent, I guess. But I should say, there are an infected Space Marine chapter. I forgot to mention that. I really like that. They're called the Scythes of the Emperor.
Oh yeah, I remember
It's
that.
not in my it's not on my notes. I'm just going off of memory here, but basically they've been infected by the Genestealer's kiss. So they wear psychic hoods to keep out the call of angels and star children, foolish Space Marines. But yeah, they wear hoods also to hide themselves from most of the world, because Genestealer Space Marines sound pretty scary to me. But
It was
that's a
also,
cool little tidbit.
Kane again, and they without too many spoilers, they do take precautions because Space Marines very much can be infected. That was a big worry in one of the Caiaphas Cain novels, dealing with the Space Hulk. They all had to be safe because they didn't want the operation to end, and then some of those Marines came back with a few extra bits.
If I remember correctly, the size of the Emperor set off the Pharaoh's beacon, I think.
No, they're chapter assigned.
Ascended.
They're assigned
they
to protect it.
Yeah, and they
Pharaoh's
have the heraldry of Barabbas Dantiok on their like armor with the skull.
Yeah, okay.
Oh no, that's silver skulls.
I always get them confused because they have the look, but
Size of the Emperor.
They are the ones who are assigned.
It's because the people who lived on the planet where the Pharos beacon is, they had like these big scythes that they would use to cut their not wheat, but like wheat equivalent, shall we say? And so it was like the people of that world, and so they basically took that as like their badge of honor.
And one of them has helped Belisarius Cawl as well when he was trekking around and was dispatched as like his little bodyguard. And I think he was involved with the little match that Belisarius had with a Catan shard. I think
in the Belisarius, his book, the Great Work.
Yeah, mate, he's definitely on the cover.
I did not know that.
Well, we'll talk about that in another video when we talk about good old Belisarius Cawl.
I believe Hal has a fun little story to tell.
Yes, I do. I've been dying to talk about this because this is just to talk a little like an interesting thing in the lore that happened to a Genestealer cult, and it was to do with your main man, not Randy Savage, but Trazyn the Infinite. So in Trazyn the Infinite's book, spoilers, we'll say now, there is a small cameo, shall I say, of Genestealers, and it was on the world of Serenade. It was the whole book is essentially around Trazyn and his rival Oricon the Diviner. They were forced to work together, and they're trying to unlock like the secrets of the world of Serenade, and they're like sitting in this human amphitheater. They're watching like a play happen, and it's a little play called King Mischief. It's like a special performance of the planet where they have a little ventriloquist doll, I think it's called. That ventriloquism, isn't it? And it has like a puppet, and it requires like a third puppet hand to help perform the magic tricks. Which is really funny because it's slash perform the mischief, and I put in brackets here. Apparently, it's a comedy because apparently people find it funny that there's a little puppet, and him and Oricon are just like in disguise, just like throwing jabs at each other, talking smack, and there's a point where Oricon notices that the performer's third arm is not a fake arm or a puppet arm. And this literally unveils a Genestealer uprising, like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And the reason this happened was because centuries earlier, Trazyn, for a laugh, took a Genestealer out of his like collection and he threw it at Oricon because he thought it'd be funny. And so that led to the Genestealer surviving, running off, and essentially starting this cult that then takes over the world of Serenade. And Oricon is like not happy because he's like, bro, we need this planet, and that joke you pulled 2 centuries ago has messed it up. That was like I would love that little part because it just shows, essentially they are there are like little cameos in other parts of different stories, but it's so funny in that book.
It shows that, and Necrons are goofballs, basically.
Oh, Trazyn is definitely.
Yeah, they truly
We're
are.
definitely Trazyn.
I gotta read that book still, freak.
And we're going to briefly talk about their powers. So I think I'll hand it back to Eli just to talk a little about their strengths and stuff like that. Although I think I might go first, to be fair, because I want to talk about I'm just talking about one particular unit, which is called the Magus. Funny enough, I just did the Magnus stuff, and Magnus is called the Magus of Prospero, so that's quite interesting. So a Genestealer Magus is essentially a Genestealer hybrid Psyker. This is the one that is, I think you see a lot of like art. There's a lot of art for this one. It can be like a man or a woman on the face of it. Again, bald, the hairline gone. and they are kind of they're often the face of the cults. So these would be the people who'd be like, oh, that kind of semi-famous person. If you're a regular Imperial citizen, you'd be like, I've heard of that person. That's the person who leads that like weird sect or something like that. And they have like a special role within the cult. So like they're ceremonial leaders, diplomats, things like that. But they also have their own like psychic abilities, which allow them to be even more effective at, I guess, manipulating people. So they have manipulation within the cult, but then they can also do it on other people as well. But they also act like a beacon to what's called the call in the warp. I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier too. And that's like a boost to that. A little funny part, I think, I'm just remembering, is that other maguses, they actually compete with each other in terms of like who can be the better magus, which is quite funny. They're not like working together. Essentially, they're a little bit like Trezin and Oricon in a way, because they're very much. I wouldn't say they're not independent. They're not independent thought. Is that the way I say it? But they're very much a highly motivated agent of the cult, and they are deadly. They are pretty. I mean, you don't want to face one in battle, pretty much. And I think I'll hand it back to Eli to talk about some of the other special members of this beautiful Star Children race.
I should say, Mommy Magus literally wears high heels. So.
No, I did all that and you ruined it. Oh my lord.
Yeah, I'll talk about some cool units that the Genestealer Cult has. Also correlates to how freaking expensive they are on the tabletop. But because there's a lot of unique units, unfortunately, depending on where you live, characters can be pretty expensive. Anywho, the blessings of the Four-Armed Emperor are many, and there are a large amount of unique forms which emerge from the breeding cycles, usually around the 3rd and 4th generation, especially when the Star Children come near. They can kind of... The disturbance in the warp and all the turbulence will make these wacky genomes start to sprout forth from the brood. Like I mentioned earlier, everyone's favorite basically is the Kellermorph, which can go into a little more detail. They are a 3-armed gunslinging hero. They hail from the 3rd generation of the local cults, and they are genetically designed. They're specifically designed to symbolize the glorious freedom-fighting cause of the Star Children. They wield 3 Liberator auto stubs and can fire them off like unlimitedly, basically. They get to fire twice on the tabletop. It's fun. They're a one-man army with guns blazing away, and they weave through enemy lines with their enhanced reflexes and strengths. They're specifically made to exploit the human psyche, or I suppose whatever race of psyche they are going to be around. But as I kind of said earlier, they bring hope to the oppressed and adventure to the criminal, and something in the human brain just kind of like sparks when they see the Kellermorph. They are blessed with heightened senses, speed, and strengths, and at times shortly before Ascension, they're literally just a folk hero, being a hero to the people, a defender to the weak, and a savior to the downtrodden. No governor or overseer is safe from these stealthy, skilled assassins, and the Kellermorph plays a key role in slaying the oppressors and figureheads of the world. And when the day of Ascension comes, they stand with the armies, being a great inspiration to the masses as they cut down swaths of enemies with a hail of bullets. They can even be equipped with ammunition called Wormtooth rounds that can destroy heavily armored vehicles. Cool stuff.
I get this is your favorite. I feel this might be.
I think it's probably it's like everyone's favorite. I don't know what my favorite is. It's kind of hard to choose. There's so many. I do like the Kellermorph. I like the Sanctus a lot as well. I like the Jackal Elphus because he rides a motorcycle and looks cool. But there's so many cool ones. The Nexus is really cool, who I'll talk about next. He's literally the big brain of the cult. His head is gigantic. Literally.
That's the model where it's like their brain is swelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Hey.
Sorry, it's
so
enlightening.
names.
They are blessed with beautiful, incredible intelligence and a knack for strategy and pure memorization. if you have a photographic memory, take that and times it by literally 1,000,000, and it's these guys. Their specific blessing and genome allows them to absorb thoughts and images from individuals simply by touching them, if I remember correctly. And these thoughts are then stored, and I forgot. I don't know the word. It starts with a C. Whatever. They're stored.
Categorized?
Something like that. It starts with a C and then an O, I think. But
What's the name of the unit again?
Compartmented. There you go.
What's the
They're
name
stored
of
and compartmented away. They're a Nexus. Nexos.
Nexus? Oh, because I thought we could probably
Nexos.
counter that with like we throw a colon at it and be like, read his mind and see what he has seen.
That's the thing. It must be distracting. You like all of a sudden you just brush someone's shoulder by accident. You walk in and see everything they think about. You go, bleach.
More of a curse.
You brush past someone's mind, and in the course of 3 seconds, the entire B movie is filtered into your brain.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It does sound like a curse at first, because like, how could anyone have that much information in their mind and not just go crazy? But
why have I now got that video in my head where like someone's like watching B movies, like I think that woman's gonna F that B. Like sorry.
Okay, so they are genetically made for this though, so it's like second nature to them. They don't mind. They're not actually in pain or anything. They just look wacky.
They're big fans of the B movie. It's fine.
Yeah. Their main task and job for Ascension Day is to create a replica map down to every single tiny meticulous detail of the entire area where they'll be ascending. So sometimes literally the entire planet. They make these really wacky, cool 3D modeled planets, and the model for like Warhammer actually is really neat. They're over this little map thing from Anyways, they do this to the tiniest detail, and so incredible are they that usually the cult itself knows more about the environment and the place and the planet they're going up to fight on than the actual like planetary guard and military knows about it. People who have lived there forever, potentially. That's the Nexus. He's cool. On the tabletop, he gives you free command points and stuff and gives out tokens and whatever. The Sanctus, which is the last one I'll talk about in length, because there's like literally 10. But Sanctus is the main assassin of the cult. They're masters of stealth, obviously. But unlike most of the cults, they're very reclusive, and they don't talk and mingle with the congregation like most people would. And they generally only hang around the Patriarch. Very privileged indeed. They wield an atrophic blade, which is distilled using the Genesis pool of the cult, which has all the fallen brothers and broodkin and the psychic might of all of these individuals pooled together in this goop, and then that's used to make this blade, which is also probably used from the Patriarch's throne. The Primus has a
Could one call it like a poop knife?
Oh yeah,
couldn't help himself.
Yeah, the Sanctus has the poop.
This is the closest I'm ever gonna get. Come on, boys, let me have it.
3-armed poop.
Oh gosh,
3-armed poop knife pussy. Let's get them all out of the way right now.
My lord.
Megusi is there. You go.
Next Usi.
Oh my lord.
So the poop knife, when it touches somebody, their heads explode basically, and their brains are reduced to slag as they're filled with the psychic shock and screams.
Knife inserts the entire B movie into their brain at once.
Literally.
The B movie poop knife. What the hell is this?
Wow, it's just cursed. Yeah.
What's the deal about poop?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you like gas?
Yeah. They also carry sniper rifles, which usually fire like toxic poisonous darts that are designed by the cult's biophagus. The biophagus is like their doctor kind of and scientist. They're especially effective against psychers. If certain toxin will overload their brains and allow the psychic fortress that is the angels and the star children to just have full consumption of them. And as they're overloaded with this insane psychic might, their heads also explode. There's a lot of exploding heads going on, I guess. But yeah, they're pretty good. They usually running around with them is a little familiar. That the patriarch is like handmade, and the patriarch can see you through the familiar, and give extra orders to that. The patriarch will also psychically stamp an individual. Well, that's not the right way to describe it, I guess. And each individual has their own psychic scent, and the patriarch will give this to the sanctus, and so like they basically can't hide no matter where they go because it has their scent picked up on their trail. They wear these fancy three-eyed goggles as well that they usually make or steal that sees in whatever every vision. They never miss that type of thing. On the tabletop, they actually literally never miss. Their attacks automatically hit. Pretty neat.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Some honorable mentions, which are basically just all the other ones, are the Primus, who's the strong-backed military leader, the Biophagus, who's the genius scientist, doctor type, the Aberrants and Aberration. The Aberrants are basically purple three-armed Ogrins with big hammers, and the Aberration is slightly smarter. The Aberration model you might have seen, they have like two heads, and they're splitting off from each other. It's pretty wacky. The Clamvis is a propaganda/truth machine who can upload basically like this wacky scream thing to all the Vox networks and make people's ears bleed and brains melt and stuff. The Reductus Saboteur.
The Alex Jones of the Genestealer world.
Turning the freaking frogs into
Purple Alex Jones would be funny. The Reductus Saboteur is a cool one. They're a genetically designed domestic terrorist. That's fun.
That's a hell of a sentence.
There's a quote right there.
They're the demo man, but with 3 arms and also purple. They are masters at making bombs and blowing things up, and that's it, basically. They can, like, squeeze through pipes and stuff, though, to get to the pristine location to blow it up. And they make the cult's explosives, which kind of moves us into the technology section after I say this one last one, which is the Jackal Elphis, who's a bike ganger, sniper guy. But moving on to the technology of the cult, what they use to fight with, which is also a reason why they're fighting with a disadvantage. They have to be very, very meticulous in their planning and have the perfect strategy. Because most of what the cult fights with are just repurposed civilian vehicles and handmade weapons. Something like the Hive cult is going to be better equipped, obviously, and take their Lehman Russes and Basilisks and all the hijacked stuff if they get. And other cults might be lucky and have enough like sleeper agent types in the Astra Militarum, but usually it's just salvage technology, stuff they put together, like literally buzz saws and mining equipment, which sounds funny at first, but when you think about it, in the 41st millennium, mining equipment is pretty efficient and is pretty dang good at cutting through the hardest materials that the galaxy has to offer.
Funny till the 9-foot-tall mutant hits you in the brain with it.
Yeah, literally. So these buzzsaw looking things can and power tools can like slice through power armor, and they definitely get the job done.
Before we go too far from the tabletop stuff, could I say 2 things about it really quick?
Of course.
One would be I haven't looked too in depth on them yet. The Genestealer Combat Patrol box is actually one of the better ones for what you get.
Yeah. It's epic. I got it.
Yeah. So the only thing that looks a bit redundant might be the Magus. Everything else you can more than certainly use multiple copies of.
Oh yeah.
So for repeat buys, it's definitely one of the better boxes.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was I absolutely love that the aberrants do more damage than the Custodes. And one of them is just wielding one of them is he's just wielding a yield sign ripped out of the ground. So on the one hand you have a perfectly crafted demigod of war, crafted to be God's personal bodyguard. And in the other corner you have Steve from mining with a stop sign ripped out of the ground. And Steve hits harder.
Oh, I always yeah.
Oh man.
For the
They're lots of fun. I guess we could talk about the Aberrants for a second. The Aberrants aren't born as aberrants. Their origins are kind of debated actually by imperial scholars. Um, Sometimes some might think that they just emerge because the angels are close. Sometimes it's a biophagist tinkering with genetics, but basically, certain individuals of the cult will undergo this huge, very painful transformation over the span of like a week or so, and they'll end up like Colin said, gigantic 9 feet tall purple beasts who are capable of tearing men in two like paper. They're basically Ogrins, though. They can be entertained by a children's toy, and just are just nice. But when the day of Ascension comes and it's time to fight, they are not to be reckoned with for sure. Usually, a lot of times, they're led by the Biophagus, who helps in their ascension. Back to the technology. It's not a lot more to say. Like, it is really just basic stuff usually. There's just enough of them to make it work. They have like handmade or homemade flamers, like little pistol flamers. The most famous of their vehicles probably is the widespread, generally used mining vehicle, which is the Goliath STC design. There's the Goliath truck, which they use as a transport, and then there's the Goliath rock grinder, which is made to grind, like I said, the galaxy's hardest materials down to dust. So it's very good for running into people and buzzsawing them into little mushy bits. The kit for the game is a freaking pain. It's literally 100 pieces, and it's not even bigger than a chimera.
Oh my lord!
But yeah, woe to you who buys the Genestealer Cults kits. They are quite the pain to build, but they're cool and fun. If you're good at building it, it's pretty fun. But yeah, they're the perfect meat grinder. They were designed for extreme terrain and hazardous places, so they're pretty tough. You don't have to worry if they're only going 80 kilometers an hour at most, maybe like 60. I don't know. They still hit hard enough and can run through vehicles and stuff like that. Yeah. So, lastly, right before we get to the Day of Ascension, I can touch a tiny bit on how they worship. It's also not overly complicated. It's a congregation of people. They're a very tight-knit community. They help those in need in the community and pick them up. You know, they laugh when others laugh. They cry when others cry. That's from the Bible. Sorry.
Did you just quote the Bible on a G?
I paraphrased. I very much paraphrased.
I don't know if that's a law crime or something. What's
real
a
crime?
Bible crime?
But yeah, they're very, very tight-knit community, and they're led by the Magus in their worship usually. The angels sing to the Magus, and she can hear them. As they get closer, she can really hear them. So they all sing hymns to the four-armed emperor and have their own ways of worship. And yeah, it's a grand old time in the underways of Genestealer cults. Nice little cozy community, going to Sunday church. Yeah.
And committing untold amounts of heresy.
That's one way to look at it. So, we have the Day of Ascension, which is the grand finale, what the cult's been waiting for, what they've been promised for generation after generation, and it's finally here. They will finally be freed from oppression and taken into the embrace of the Star's children in a holy union. And depending on how you look at this, that is true. It is true. I have a quote here that someone can read. Who wants to read a quote?
Who's filling up for
I
that
haven't
one?
posted it yet.
I'll read a quote if it's okay.
Yeah. I legally put it in the regular chat instead of the fancy chat. But
Told her hoarsely. All right, I gotta get my voice nice and hoarse for this.
It's a tech adaptive that makes it.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, I can't speak like a speaking spell, so
00101.
yeah. I'll do my best. You're making a mistake, he told her hoarsely. The things you want to call out to, they will consume you. They're not angels, they're monsters. Her face was beatifically calm when she answered him. What makes you think, she said, that they are two different things?
Ugh.
Yeah, she then proceeds to put the pistol to the tech adept's head and blow his brains out. It was awesome. Oh, that's major spoilers to the Day of Ascension. I guess you should have been expecting that though if you're watching this. The Day of Ascension is an awesome book. You should read it.
What, can we say the fun word yet?
Yeah.
They come. They
Fun
come.
word. The Star Children, the gods, they have finally arrived, and it is the Tyranids, the great,
Woo!
vast, monstrous,
Ooh.
all-consuming Xenos species
The
from
vor-
beyond our galaxy.
The vor
Yuck.
fetishists.
Yeah. I should have gotten a second quote though. Sakiri, no, not Sakiri. What's her name? I don't know. The main character of this, she is not allowed to be part of Ascension. Sadly, she has to go on and spread the truth amongst the stars. So she leaves the planet as Ascension Day is coming, and she sees the Tyranid biofleet emerge above the planet and send spores down to the planet to reclaim their children. And to her, it is just as she imagined. All the spines and teeth and tendrils. It's beautiful to her. And it's quite glorious. So not everyone, it's not bad for everyone.
Buffet.
Basically, the Tyranids come, and conveniently, the planet's military has been killed and destroyed. And now all this biomass is free for the taking. So the cults and the planet and everyone with it is consumed by the Tyranids in glorious union with the Star Children. Hooray!
Oh,
This isn't to say that cults always die when the Tyranids come. Usually, the very general case is that
They would
get
always
eaten.
die if they didn't have other options.
Yeah.
9 out of 10
but-
times.
Yes, but 1 out of 10 times they aren't. Well, I don't even know if 1 out of 10 is the right. Probably like
1 out of 100.
0.1 out of 10.
10,000.
Yeah. There have been reports though of ships and cultists like leaving the planet with the Tyranids, which is crazy. Sometimes the cults will join the Imperial Defenders and believe that they've made a mistake and help fight off the Tyranids. Usually, though, they'll just fight with the Tyranids to destroy the Imperials or whatever world they're on.
is that if the patriarch is killed because the signals,
I'm not
Worse.
probably. That probably helps.
I know,
the
think it's-
call of the
Angels of
Tyranids?
Death series, and then they do not look happy. And they're like, oh no, and you run away, and you're like, yeah, go and run back to your.
I was going to ask that 'cause I think sometimes doesn't, because obviously the Tyranid hive mind is sending out a signal the entire time, just being like, obviously that's what's kind of the patriarch is boosting that signal for the cult. I think at sometimes it just goes, I don't need to blast the signal anymore, as like it's devouring, and then they go, oh no, like, that's when they actually, some of them realize like what's happened.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes the cult believes that they've made a mistake. Sometimes they don't. In the end,
Get what they deserve.
they do truly become unified with the Tyranids, with the Star Children. They are biomass that is then used by the Tyranid fleet to create other organisms and return to their
line
pilgrimage amongst the stars. And they are freed from the shackles of slavery and oppression, and all the pain is taken away.
That's one way of putting it, I suppose.
Wow, that was
Shelters,
that was a lot
maybe
of
quicker.
propaganda. I have to say. Thank you, Eli.
Propaganda is based. The faction you like the most is always in the right.
That's right. That's freaking right.
That's actually kind of true.
The best factions are the one I like.
Yep.
Thank. Oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, you're good. You can keep going.
I was gonna say,
the cults are awesome. That's
Thank you so much, Eli. That was I think we are the experts on genestealers now. We can actually.
Boy,
This is the
that's
first
like
time I
basically
can.
everything.
I actually feel like an expert now.
I'm gonna go rob a Levi's store now. For
Did you,
legal reasons, this is a joke.
Did you guys have
Oh.
any questions or comments? Do you have like a particular favorite, maybe unit, a favorite cult, or a favorite type of genestealer? The Senator Armstrong, Austin Power, Patrick, Modern Warfare 2 lobby, Elon Musk simp. You know what I mean? Like,
I really like the idea of like there was what was its name again? The one that started worshiping Nurgle. Started with a T, I know.
Cult Tenebris.
Cult Tenebris. I like the idea of that happening with other like deities. And I this really funny image in my mind I have of them accidentally going full circle and a Genestealer cult starts worshiping the actual emperor, like on accident. Like it'd be like, I don't know how this happened.
The two-armed emperor. How holy is he?
Oh god.
Like accidentally, it's just like it's some inquisitor goes like, I feel like I should do something about this, but I'm not going to.
Or an inquisitor finds a way to like mess with their like signal and turns them against them. Goes right, use our emperors. Yeah, that'll work. That'll be good.
Yeah. The two-legged, two-arm emperor.
Does the idea of what they actually are, is that clear enough? Do you think we might have to do a Tyranids beginner to expert one of these days for all those newbies to really understand what the Tyranids are?
I think, yeah. I feel like I've got a really good grasp because they're quite like a unique flavor, I think, in Warhammer as well, because they are a bit they're not like orcs, where orcs are a bit, they're comic relief, but like they are pretty much a again, like I said just before, it's like a different flavor. It's like it's so opposite to what a space marine. It's nice to have. They're a good enemy, if you know what I mean. I enjoy that.
Yeah, a lot of people. Go ahead, Mr. Colin.
Oh, sorry. I like how they're like, obviously Genestealers as a whole are a pretty big scale threat, but like individual Genestealer cults, they're really only a problem for the planet they're on. And I like that it's smaller scale than Abaddon rocking up to blow up a star system for the 10th time.
Yeah, and I guess it should also be said that like sometimes the Tyranids don't even show up. Like that's the thing. Sometimes the day of Ascension happens and they win, and then they just spread to.
What do we do now?
It's just like a deadbeat dad. It's like, this is my ball game.
This is like, when Black Friday, like, and then started out and it was a big thing, and then now Black Friday, and like, the people in the videos, like people opening stores, and like no one's rushing in because they already know that they've already hiked up the price before.
And then just Amazon or Cyber Monday buying.
Yeah.
Buy the status.
The cults, like a lot of people don't like the faction because they think, oh, like all my cool characters just die in the end. I mean, like, yeah, but like, they do. But so does everyone. Everyone dies eventually, right? Like these aren't immortal beings like the Eldar or Space Marines. And the Tau characters only live because they get put to sleep every time they come out, and like that's not gonna stop Shadow
spicy
Suns
poop knives.
yeah.
That's take life.
Also, guys like the Sons of Jormungandr, they don't even live on planets; they live in space. A lot of cults will spread to the stars in general. Like I said, from the Day of Ascension, the girl leaves with the Scutari Alpha to go spread to other places. So it's not always the end for everyone in the cult.
I think it helps them like with the tabletop aspects of Warhammer, because like with the immortality thing, like Rabute Gilliman, like the Primarchs aren't going to age to death.
Yeah.
But in the context of a war game, there's nothing stopping him from some random Tau railgunner tabling him turn one of them mad. And then narratively, that would be the fate of the Primarch of the Imperium. Some guy in a railgun 100 feet away blew his head off. Versus, with the Genestealers, it lends to them being a war game faction in a way, because their end result is they join the Star Gods. They get eaten by Tyranids, but it makes them more war gamey in a way.
Yeah,
I have to say thank you so much, Eli, because you did a lot of research there. We appreciate that a lot. That was we are experts 100%, I feel like, at the end of that. And if you were listening along with us, enjoying this, please like, subscribe. It helps us, please. It's like a bacon, isn't it? Helps
support the cult of the two-armed emperor.
So he has 2 arms and 3 legs.
There are 8 arms. We do have 8 arms in total. That's a multiple of 4.
Okay.
We're the 8-armed emperor.
8-armed emperor. And tune in next time for our next episode. We'll be returning a little bit to Horus Heresy era / 30k. We'll be talking about the Giga Chads themselves, the Primarchs. Little dabble into all of them. He likes robot girly man. Don't forget to, if you made it this far, Thank you, firstly. And also the question we did at the beginning, where what's your hot take on your least favorite Primarch? Hashtag hot take for your comment there. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for listening and watching.
Have a good one, everyone.
Farewell. Blessings of
Bye.
the Forum and Emperor upon you.
Horned
I
Rat.
love you all.